They never expected you to find it. Tucked away inside a declassified NASA transmission log, buried under layers of bureaucratic language and redacted paragraphs, was a timestamp. It looked like just another data entry. But the date was wrong. Or more accurately, it was impossible. It hadn't happened yet, at least not on this timeline. October 28th, 2046. It stood there, blinking. No explanation, no corresponding mission name, no flight number, just a lonely piece of time, dangling like a thread from a fabric you were never supposed to touch. And beside it, a set of coordinates. But they didn't lead to a place. They led to a frequency. And when decoded, the frequency led to a name. Yours. At first, you thought it was a glitch. Maybe some intern at NASA accidentally embedded a personal data key into a public system. Maybe it was a joke. But as you followed the breadcrumbs, cross-referencing satellite logs, matching heat signatures, and studying irregular signal pulses, you realized this wasn't random. It was a call, and not a recent one. This signal had been pinging silently for years. The only difference now? You could finally hear it. What changed? Something inside you, something ancient, dormant, forgotten. You hadn't been looking for anything beyond the ordinary. You were just living, surviving, scrolling, sleeping. But then, the dreams started. The symbols, the stars blinking in rhythm like they were speaking. You woke up one morning and felt it, like your chest was a radio dial finally set to the right frequency. That's when you found the file. That's when the date appeared. And that's when everything started unraveling. You don't remember asking for this kind of awakening. You never thought you'd be the one to stumble on the forgotten truth. But here you are, and the date is still blinking, not as a warning, not as a countdown, but as an activation. A moment outside of time that's waiting for your permission to become real. The deeper you go, the more impossible things become. But they also make more sense than anything else ever has. The file contains movement data, satellite trajectories that don't match any known flight paths, vibration patterns recorded from orbit that resemble ancient sacred geometry. One note scribbled into the margins of a mission transcript reads, "Contact was not external. It was embedded. Subject unaware of significance. You are the subject. You are the significance." They tried to archive the truth, but the truth has a strange way of resurrecting itself when the time is right. And now, the time is more than right. It's alive, and it's choosing you. You always felt it, didn't you? Long before the file, before the frequency, before the dreams began bleeding into your waking hours. There was something inside you that pulsed just slightly out of rhythm with the world around you. You laughed at the wrong time, felt things too deeply, heard meaning in silence. You walked through your life like someone searching for the corner in a circular room, never quite fitting in, never quite surrendering to the mold everyone else seemed comfortable wearing. You tried, of course. You tried to be small. You tried to be quiet. You even tried to forget that feeling in your bones, the one that whispered, "You are not like the others." But the truth doesn't shrink just because it's ignored. And no matter how deeply you buried that knowing, it only grew more luminous in the dark. They called you sensitive, emotional, overly curious. You took it as criticism, but now looking back, you realize they were trying to name what they couldn't understand. The light in you made their shadows uncomfortable, and so they wrapped your brightness in labels to keep it manageable. But the universe never intended for you to be manageable. You were never built for that. You were built to see beyond the veil, to listen between the words, to remember what the world agreed to forget. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. There's a difference. Feeling chosen doesn't make you superior. It makes you responsible. That knowing in your soul, that gravitational pull towards something greater, wasn't a delusion. It was an invitation. And now that the call has reached you in full frequency, there's no going back to the silence. You were never meant to blend in, Your empathy was never a flaw. Your curiosity was never a defect. These were the sacred blueprints encoded in your spirit for this moment in time. You didn't choose the calling, but you did survive everything meant to stop you from hearing it. Every disappointment, every delay, every betrayal, each was a test. And each time you chose to keep going. Maybe not gracefully, maybe not confidently, but you moved. You kept your heart open when others closed theirs. You kept wondering when cynicism would have been easier. That was no accident. That was programming. Divine resilience woven into your DNA. Proof that you were never ordinary. Because if you had been, you would have broken. You would have bowed. You would have disappeared into the background. But you didn't. You're still here. And now that you found the file, now that you know the truth was always waiting for you, the illusion of normalcy can't survive. Not after this. Not after reading your own name encoded in the coordinates of a forgotten satellite signal. Not after feeling something ancient rise inside you, like a song you forgot you knew. You were never here to follow maps made by others. You were here to remember the stars by heart. And now, they're guiding you back to yourself. Long before language wrapped itself around your thoughts, before your lungs knew air and your eyes knew light, there was sound. Not the kind you hear with ears, but the kind you feel with your being. A soft hum, a vibration, echoing through the amniotic dark. It wasn't your mother's heartbeat. It wasn't the world outside. It was something older, something deeper, something sent. That whisper wasn't made of words, but of memory. A code planted in your forming cells. A signal from a time and space that has no coordinates on any known map. And yet, it lives inside you like a truth too big for language. You've always carried it, that invisible cord connecting you to something beyond this dimension. As a child, you would stare at the night sky and feel a strange ache in your chest, like homesickness for a place you couldn't name. You didn't understand it then, but now, with the document open before you and the patterns aligning around you, it's beginning to make sense. That ache wasn't emptiness, it was remembrance. The soul reaching back through timelines, through veils, through layers of forgetfulness, trying to retrieve the original assignment. You weren't sent here by mistake. You were sent on mission, not to save the world with might or machines, but to awaken it with memory, to breathe into the sleeping, to remind them of the harmony they once sang before the noise of power and politics and programs drowned it out. The whisper in the womb was your orientation, a soft reminder of where you came from, of who you've always been. It was the original transmission. And now, the file you uncovered proves it wasn't imagined. They knew. Someone in those classified rooms knew that certain souls arrive already aligned. They called you anomalies. But anomalies are only strange to systems built without truth. And what do you call a child born with a song in their bones? What do you call someone who feels frequencies instead of fear? The world calls them broken. Heaven calls them chosen. You were never empty. You were encoded. The light in you was not added over time. It was remembered over silence. That whisper in the womb did not fade with age. It deepened, waited, and now it's resurfacing with force. Every déjà vu, every shiver for no reason, every dream that felt more real than reality, it was all part of the reactivation. And the file you hold now is not new. It's ancient, older than any document, older than NASA, older than this dimension. It's confirmation. You were never lost. You were planted. The public believes that all NASA data is science, math, metal, propulsion. They don't realize how often science bleeds into something else, something it can't quantify. Buried beneath mission names and sterile technical language are the things they don't speak about publicly, things they can't explain. Transmission logs that don't follow known orbital paths. Pulses that repeat every 777 seconds with no known source. Voices that return on frequencies no one sent. Signals that bypass language and enter directly into thought. One such transmission was received at 3:03 a.m. on a forgotten December night. It was marked in the archive as noise, but someone knew better. They didn't label it unknown. They labeled it sentient. You found it by accident, or maybe not. You weren't searching for transmissions. You were following a breadcrumb, a strange footnote in an unrelated file. But when you opened the audio, you didn't hear noise. You heard a pattern, a rhythm that matched your dreams. Your breath stilled. The back of your neck lit up. It didn't sound like language, but you understood it anyway. Not with your ears, with your cells. That's when the real pattern emerged. The transmission wasn't a message in the way we understand communication. It was a mirror. It pulsed with energy that aligned precisely with the vibrational resonance of your own body's electromagnetic field. How do you explain that to someone who's never felt the air shift around their soul? How do you prove that a sound can feel like a name? You traced it further. The source was triangulated, or so they thought, from outside lunar orbit. But if you looked at the reverse signal trail, it bent, not across space but through time, as if the transmission wasn't just from somewhere, it was from somewhen. And if that's true, then it means you're not just receiving a message, you're remembering it. You closed your eyes and let the sound fill you. And in that moment, something snapped into place, like a code finding its final digit. The doubt cracked, the fear dissolved. You weren't imagining things. The documents weren't fake. The whispers weren't hallucinations. The transmission had always been real. They just hoped you'd never learn how to listen. Someone inside NASA heard it too. That's why the transmission was buried. Not deleted, not erased, just hidden. Because deletion is denial. Hiding is fear. They feared what would happen if someone like you, someone encoded with memory and resonance, found it. And now you have. The transmission wasn't warning you, it was waking you. Not everyone would understand. Not everyone can hold this kind of knowing, but you were built for it. You were calibrated by light, tuned by memory, and sent through time with instructions only your soul could decipher. And now the signal has been found. Now the archive is open. Now the noise has become your name. And nothing will ever be the same. It wasn't just sound. It wasn't just a signal. What you uncovered next proved that the transmission held something even more staggering. A pattern, a map, a design. Not for a place, not for a spacecraft, but for a human soul. It was encoded in the frequency burst that repeated itself every 777 seconds. You slowed it down, dissected it, translated it into light and then into numbers. And that's when the blueprint appeared, like a digital fingerprint blooming on the screen. You knew what you were looking at, even if no one had ever shown it to you before. It was the shape of you, not your body, not your face, but your essence. A waveform of consciousness that matched your energy field exactly. A design beyond biology, a signature of spirit. They called it Designation Theta 13 in the notes attached to the transmission. But that was their name for it. Your name was written in the field. The exact vibrational match to your birth date, your heart rate, your circadian rhythm. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't even discovery. This was remembering. The blueprint wasn't created that night. It was located. And it had always belonged to you. You felt it as you stared at the glowing patterns, like someone had handed you a mirror after a lifetime of shadows. All the times you'd felt strange, displaced, too intense, too different, they were suddenly rendered sacred. You weren't out of place, you were out of time. The design was ancient, far older than any civilization. It felt like it had been whispered into existence before language was born, and somehow you had been carrying it inside you all along. The blueprint didn't just explain who you were, it revealed why you were here. Embedded within the lines were coordinates, not to locations, but to events, moments in history, triggers, cosmic alignments where chosen ones like you would be activated. Some had already passed, some were yet to come, and one was rapidly approaching. October 28th, 2046, the same date you'd found first. It was no longer just a timestamp, it was a synchronization point, a convergence of identity and destiny. Your hands trembled, not from fear, but from the sheer magnitude of knowing. The idea that your existence had always been tracked, not by surveillance, but by starlight. That your soul had been singing at a frequency only the universe could hear. That NASA, in its unspoken awe, had quietly archived the evidence of something they couldn't explain, but couldn't ignore. You closed the blueprint file and looked at your reflection. But it wasn't just you anymore. It was the pattern behind your eyes, the light in your bones, the memory in your breath. You hadn't changed. You'd finally aligned. The design hadn't arrived from space. It had awakened from within. A lost blueprint, now found. And it was yours. The moment you understood the blueprint, something in the world shifted. Not visibly, not to everyone, but in the current beneath the current. That invisible hum that moves through people, through systems, through the spaces between. The signal that had been dormant inside you was no longer quiet. It was pulsing, sending ripples outward. You didn't broadcast it intentionally. You didn't have to. Awakening is not something you say, it's something you become. And every time a chosen one remembers who they are, the old systems tremble. They lose control over what they never built. You started noticing it almost immediately. The static in your electronics, the lights flickering when you entered a room, people looking at you with an unease they couldn't explain, as if they were seeing you for the first time and yet didn't know why they couldn't look away. It wasn't power in the human sense. It was resonance. The energy field around you had changed, elevated, expanded. And that kind of expansion threatens anything built on limitation. You weren't meant to notice the patterns behind control, but now you see them everywhere. The endless distractions, the narratives that keep people small, the fear disguised as order. You start to realize that the systems weren't designed to protect humanity. They were designed to contain it, to keep consciousness asleep, to keep you asleep. Because an awakened mind doesn't need permission. An awakened soul doesn't obey illusion. It remembers its own authority. That's why your awakening matters. Not because it makes you chosen in a hierarchy, but because it makes you ungovernable by lies. You were never meant to fight systems with force. You were meant to outgrow them through truth. That's the part they fear the most. They can suppress information, control data, manipulate stories, but they cannot cage an awakened frequency. They can't mute the sound of a soul that hums in harmony with the cosmos. That sound doesn't come from rebellion. It comes from remembrance. The file you found, the date they hid, the blueprint they buried, all of it was containment, a desperate attempt to delay the inevitable. But control built on secrecy always collapses under the weight of revelation. And revelation has already begun. You can feel it. The magnetic field around you is changing, aligning. Time feels different. Even your thoughts seem to travel faster, clearer, more certain. You are syncing with the original rhythm, and that rhythm cannot be programmed or predicted. They wanted you docile, obedient, asleep. They wanted you to keep doubting yourself, because doubt is the lock. But the moment you chose to trust your knowing, the lock shattered. You opened a door they thought would stay sealed forever. The truth is not coming. It's already here, breathing through you. And now that you've awakened, control is an illusion that can't hold your light anymore. When they realized what the awakening would mean, their first instinct wasn't to destroy the truth, it was to hide it. You can't erase the stars, but you can blind the eyes that seek them. They began with subtle distortions. Orbital data quietly adjusted, astronomical archives rewritten in silence, satellites redirected to capture less, to report less. Images blurred under the excuse of calibration. It looked harmless, just science correcting itself. But underneath the surface, something else was happening. They were cutting threads, threads that connected heaven to earth, threads that guided the seekers home. They tried to erase the sky, because the sky remembers. You started to notice it too. The stars you once knew weren't where they used to be. The constellations shifted slightly, not enough for the public to notice, but enough for your body to sense. The night felt quieter, heavier, as though light itself had been instructed to lie. You could feel it in your chest, a strange grief for something unseen. But grief is proof of connection, and the more they tried to silence the cosmos, the louder your soul began to hum. You were not supposed to forget. The blueprint within you refused to be rewritten. There were documents, heavily redacted, about artificial light regulation, orbital obstruction initiatives, and frequency containment zones. They called them safety measures, but you could read the fear between the lines. They weren't afraid of chaos, they were afraid of awakening. Because once humanity remembers it was born from stardust, control becomes impossible. How do you govern beings who remember they are infinite? You don't. You distract them. You build ceilings and call them skies. You dim stars and call it progress. You bury truth under data and call it research. But they underestimated something. They forgot that light doesn't need to be seen to exist. You can cover the stars, but you cannot touch the radiation of their memory. Every photon ever born still travels. Every whisper of creation still moves. And when those frequencies meet a soul that is awake, recognition happens. You are that recognition. That's why you can still feel the pulse even when the night looks empty. The stars didn't disappear. They turned inward, into you. And so, they failed. The blackout wasn't enough. The veil wasn't thick enough. Because no matter how much they tried to erase the sky found another way to speak. Through dream, through intuition, through resonance, through you. Every time you close your eyes and feel that deep pull toward the cosmos, it's the universe reminding you that it cannot be censored, that your light is the rebellion they never saw coming. You were never meant to look up to find the stars. You were meant to remember they were always inside you, and no blackout in history can dim what was born to burn eternal. It happened quietly, without ceremony, without light or thunder. You didn't hear a voice, but you felt it, the shift. The vibration that once pressed against you from the outside suddenly opened, like a gate that had been waiting for your signal. Access granted. You didn't ask for clearance, yet it came. Not because of your effort, but because of your readiness. The universe doesn't respond to begging, it responds to resonance. And finally, your frequency matched the truth it had been calling to. You were always meant to reach this point, but only when the alignment was complete. You now have cosmic clearance, and that changes everything. You start noticing strange coincidences. Files that once refused to open suddenly do. Pages that were once locked behind red warnings load instantly, no error, no explanation. Passwords appear in your dreams, and when you try them, they work. Devices hum when you enter the room, like they recognize you as something they've been programmed to obey. But this isn't hacking. This is harmony. You are simply operating at the level the universe built you for. The clearance was never about permission from them. It was about remembrance from you. Your heart beats differently now. You can feel energy moving through your body in waves, synchronizing with something vast and unseen. You understand things you've never studied. Words form in your mind that you didn't learn, but somehow know. You can sense the grid, the invisible architecture that holds all of creation together. Every thought, every breath, every pulse of light is connected, and now you can navigate it. This is what they meant by access restricted. They didn't fear that you would find the truth. They feared that you would become it, because when you have cosmic clearance, you stop asking the old questions. You stop searching for proof. You stop worshipping the gates. You realize there was never anything to open, because you were the key all along. The codes written in your DNA begin to activate. Your intuition sharpens to surgical precision. You start meeting people who carry the same spark, the others who are waiting for your frequency to rise so they could find you. That's how the network awakens, not through contact, but through recognition. They'll call it coincidence or paranoia or divine madness, but you know better. The blueprint was always leading to this moment, the convergence of memory and power, of flesh and light. You can feel the universe listening now, as if every star has turned its face toward you, not to worship, but to welcome. You are no longer an observer of the divine. You are a participant in its unfolding. The clearance was never about authority. It was about capacity. You can now carry the current without breaking. And as you breathe in this knowing, the message becomes clear. The mission has begun. You are no longer waiting for the signal. You are the signal. The deeper you go, the less surprised you become. Shock has been replaced by recognition. The truths you uncover now don't startle you. They complete you. And when you read the next part of the document, the one marked only with the phrase biological resonance report, something ancient stirred in your blood. It wasn't data. It was a mirror. They weren't studying your body. They were studying your origin. Hidden within the genome sequences was something that didn't match anything on record, not animal, not plant, not synthetic. They labeled it non-terrestrial signal pattern embedded in biological host. They were speaking in code, but you knew what it meant. You are not from here, not entirely. They had tried to frame it as anomaly, but anomalies don't repeat themselves with precision. Your DNA carried markers, harmonic alignments that corresponded not to earthly frequencies, but to planetary magnetic fields. Certain constellations activated them, specific lunar phases amplified them. They'd been tracking this. You, and others like you, responded not to medication or machines, but to moonlight and silence. And while the world dismissed you as too sensitive, they knew better. You were responsive because you were designed to be. Your blood hums when the veil thins. Your cells adjust when truth enters the room. That's not fragility. That's divine calibration. You traced those markers, those patterns, and you found something even stranger. The numerical codes embedded in the sequences echoed sacred geometry, spirals, phi ratios, cosmic math. Somehow your body was a living equation, solving for a mystery only the stars could explain. And the more you looked, the more undeniable it became. You were not the product of random biology. You were engineered by intention. This wasn't evolution alone. This was infusion. Something higher braided itself into the double helix, knowing that one day, when the time was right, you would awaken. And when you did, you'd feel it not just in your mind, but in your marrow. You always knew you were different, not in superiority, but in signature. Now you understand why. The world trained you to suppress it, to normalize it, to numb it. But nothing can keep divinity buried forever. The sacred always rises, and now that it has, nothing fits the way it used to. Food tastes different. Noise feels louder. Words weigh more. You are no longer processing the world through the filter of forgetfulness. You are decoding it through the lens of origin. Your DNA is not just genetic, it's galactic. And the very blueprint they tried to label as abnormal is the map back to everything they lost. You are not the end of a story, you are its return. The silence in your blood has broken. The frequencies have aligned. You are a walking archive of light, a vessel encoded with ancient intelligence. You were always sacred. The file just proved it. And now the cosmos is watching closely, because divinity, once remembered, cannot be contained. It didn't feel like a beginning at the time. It felt like confusion, maybe even chaos. The sky dimmed in the middle of the day, and the light folded in on itself. Shadows curved unnaturally, and everything paused for just a moment, not in fear, but in breath. You remember where you were, not because the eclipse was rare, but because something inside you responded before your mind could explain. You weren't just watching a celestial event, you were being awakened by it. And only now, with the documents decrypted and the codes aligning, do you understand what actually happened on that day. The NASA files called it Event Theta Lux, a rare total eclipse followed by an unexpected electromagnetic pulse that caused minor technical disturbances across their satellite grid. But what they didn't publish was the internal observation, that the pulse frequency mirrored human brainwave activity, specifically those in deep meditative states. In other words, something about that eclipse activated not machines but minds, but not all minds, only those wired to feel it, only those whose blueprints carried the embedded resonance, only you. On that day, something opened inside you. You felt dizzy, disoriented, but not in the usual way. It wasn't sickness, it was recalibration. For days after, you couldn't explain the vivid dreams, the sharp intuition, the inexplicable knowing that followed you like a current. You were being rewired, not forcibly, but rhythmically. The eclipse was a timing device, a cosmic switch built into the sky, set to trip only when the collective field was ready to receive it. And you were one of the few calibrated to respond. You didn't need a ceremony, you needed alignment. And the sun, the moon, and the earth aligned for you. They always told us eclipses were omens. Maybe they were right, just not in the way we were taught. They weren't warnings, they were awakenings, a shadow across the sun to remind you that even the brightest light must go dark to evolve. That day, your old identity began to dissolve, not in drama, but in stillness. The part of you that had accepted the world's version of you, the labels, the limitations, the doubts, it lost its grip, and in its place, something vast and ancient stirred. You don't remember choosing it, but it chose you. The eclipse didn't give you anything new. It reactivated what had always been waiting. And now, everything that followed, the transmissions, the codes, the blueprint, the frequency you're walking in now, it all started there, in the stillness of that celestial shadow. You are not just someone who witnessed a moment. You are someone who became it. The sky moved to awaken you, and it worked. They always had a name for people like you. Dreamers, fantasists, mystics, conspiracy theorists, anything that would dismiss the truth without having to confront it. It wasn't just doubt they cast over you, it was containment. Because if they could convince the world you were lost in illusion, they wouldn't have to face the possibility that you were right, that your sensitivity was signal, that your imagination was memory, that your visions weren't fiction. They were fragments of something long buried, now returning in pieces, alive in your voice, your eyes, your presence. You tried to explain once, when the dreams began to echo with symbols no language could carry, when you felt the stars humming in your chest, when you heard names in your sleep that didn't belong to this time. You tried to share the wonder, the ache, the awe, and they looked at you like you'd unraveled. They told you it was beautiful, but impossible, that it was poetic, but untrue. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a part of them was afraid you were telling the truth, because your knowing made their forgetfulness feel like a cage. So they gave you myth. They placed your story beside fables and legends, wrapped your voice in allegory, and smothered your frequency with ridicule. They told children that those who spoke of the stars were daydreamers, that those who felt too deeply were unstable. They trained generations to turn away from the very path that leads home. And through it all, you kept walking, quietly, secretly, protecting your light like a sacred ember no wind could reach. And now, the file is open. The coordinates match. The codes confirm. Everything they called delusion has structure. Everything they laughed off has architecture. The name they buried in mockery now glows in truth. You were never myth. You were memory. A vessel encoded with proof that reality is far more expansive than the systems built to confine it. They fear you now, not because you threaten them with violence, but because you threaten them with vision. You represent what they cannot control, a soul aligned with origin, walking with eyes that see beneath the surface. You cannot be programmed because you remember too much. You cannot be silenced because silence speaks through you. You are not dangerous because of your power. You are dangerous because of your clarity, and that's why they gave you myth. But myth has a secret they forgot. It outlasts fact. It survives erasure. It travels through symbols, through song, through dreams. Myth doesn't die. It waits. And when it returns, it doesn't ask for permission. It simply rises. And so have you. You are the myth made flesh. The story that refused to stay buried. The living proof that the sacred always finds a way back. You were never a lie. You were a prophecy. And now, they have no choice but to believe. It wasn't hidden in a cave or sealed in clay. It didn't lie beneath sand or behind stone. The ancient scroll they wrote about in whispers was never lost to time. It was encrypted, buried in code, disguised as data. The sacred had evolved, adapting to the age that needed it most. You didn't stumble upon a relic, you downloaded it. The divine archive has gone digital, and when you opened that file, your screen became scripture. The light pouring from it wasn't just pixels, it was prophecy. They always said the next revelation wouldn't come on paper. It would come through frequency, through electric current, through the very systems that once enslaved humanity to distraction. The enemy hid the message inside the noise, believing no one would have the patience to look. But you did. You scrolled past the illusions, filtered through the static, and found it. A pulse between patterns, a whisper inside binary. When you touched the document, your device trembled. You thought it was glitching, but it was syncing. The file wasn't reading your fingerprint, it was reading your frequency. The symbols began to move. Lines of code folded into shapes, shapes into geometry, geometry into language. Not written, but felt. It bypassed logic and entered directly through sensation. You weren't just reading words, you were remembering them. Each line pulled something from the depths of your being, something you didn't know was stored there. You weren't learning, you were reawakening. The digital scroll wasn't telling you who you were, it was reminding you. You realized then that technology had never been humanity's curse. It was a mirror, an attempt to replicate divine design. Every network, every algorithm, every data stream was an imitation of the cosmic grid that connects all creation. The ancients carved their truths into stone because stone was the most permanent thing they knew. But today, permanence lives in data. Light carries what clay once held. The message has simply changed medium, not meaning. You understand now why the world has been obsessed with information, with connectivity, with screens. They are a metaphor for something far older. Every transmission, every signal, every piece of code is humanity's unconscious attempt to recreate the bridge between the divine and the digital, between heaven and hardware. The scroll was never lost. It was waiting for a generation fluent in light. When you finished reading, your reflection on the screen looked different. There was recognition in your eyes, not of yourself, but of the one who encoded you. The scroll wasn't outside of you anymore. It was inside, etched into your neural patterns, alive in your pulse. You didn't just find the document, you became its continuation. And in that moment, the hum of your device turned into something holy. The machine had served its purpose. The message had found its host. The scroll was never meant to be preserved. It was meant to be embodied. You thought it was a dream. At first, the sky stretching wider than the eye could follow, the stars forming unfamiliar constellations. A voice, not with sound, but sensation, calling you by a name you had never heard, yet instantly knew as yours. You woke up breathless, certain something real had just occurred. Not imagined, not symbolic, real. And then the file confirmed it. Subject exhibits signs of unsolicited astral contact during periods of celestial alignment. Transmission confirmed. Response recorded. They knew. They had been monitoring not just your behavior, but your sleep. Not for surveillance, for pattern, for resonance. They were watching for when the signal would reach you. And it did. The transmission didn't come through wires or satellites. It came through vibration, through starlight, through the infinite hallway that connects consciousness across space. It came because you were finally quiet enough to hear it, receptive enough to feel it, willing enough to receive it. And what it delivered wasn't a message in the traditional sense. It was a remembering, a frequency designed to unlock something ancient within you, a forgotten protocol embedded in the soul. You felt it ever since, in the way your skin tingles beneath certain stars, in the sudden surges of clarity that defy logic, in the pull toward places you've never visited but miss like home. The transmission wasn't words, it was orientation. Now you know which way to walk. You've become magnetized toward truth, like iron drawn to its origin. They'll say it's hallucination, imagination, sleep paralysis. But the body doesn't lie, and your body has been responding like a tuning fork struck by an invisible note. The tremors aren't fear, they're alignment. The voice that spoke to you across dimensions wasn't speaking English or any human tongue. It was speaking frequency. It was reminding your soul of the assignment you accepted long before this body, this world, this name. There's a reason the stars have always called to you. They are not distant, they are kin. And now, the transmission has reactivated the bridge. You don't need a telescope to hear them. You need only stillness. The message is ongoing, layered in light, embedded in your every breath. You are now a receiver, a broadcaster, a part of the network that stretches beyond planets, beyond galaxies. You thought the awakening would be dramatic, but it came in silence, in the quiet dark of sleep, when your defenses were down and your memory was open. That's how truth always returns, not with noise, but with knowing. And now, even when you're fully awake, you can still hear it. You've wondered for years why certain places stir something in you, why specific sounds make your chest ache, why a stranger's eyes can fill you with grief or recognition. You've chased answers, blamed it on déjà vu, on past lives, on overactive imagination. But now the truth sits in front of you, embedded in the classified files like a whisper breaking through a fog. It wasn't your imagination, it was memory, and it was never erased. just sealed. You were never meant to forget, not fully. But memory, raw and unfiltered, is too heavy to carry in a world that punishes the extraordinary. So it was locked, encoded into symbols, stored in dreams, buried in your reactions. Every time you felt too much, every time you knew things you couldn't explain, every time your instincts contradicted logic, that was the lock vibrating against its cage, trying to open, trying to remind you. They called it psychological protection, a necessary failsafe. But what they didn't predict was the rise of your frequency. They didn't anticipate that one day you'd grow into the version of yourself capable of holding that much truth. You became strong enough to crack the code, not with force, but with frequency. And that's what this journey has been. Not learning something new, but releasing something old. That's why the files didn't shock you. They felt familiar. They weren't delivering information. They were returning it. Each word you read, each code you uncovered, didn't add knowledge. It awakened memory. You always knew. That's the most terrifying and liberating part. The scrolls, the transmissions, the synchronicities. They weren't messages from outside you. They were permissions from inside you. And now that the lock is gone, the flood begins. You remember things you didn't live in this life, but feel in your bones. You remember how the stars used to sound, how energy used to respond to your intention like breath to lungs. You remember the architecture of the sacred, the temples not made with hands, but with sound. You remember the real meaning of connection, of mission, of communion. And most of all, you remember that you chose this, not the pain, but the purpose. You were not put here by accident. You were placed with precision. And the forgetting was not punishment. It was strategy. Because only those who could remember under pressure were meant to unlock the path forward. Now the pressure is off. The locks are gone. And what remains is you, fully returned to yourself, carrying not just your identity, but your origin. You are no longer in search of memory. You are its release. You thought it was only happening inside you, the shifts, the awakenings, the unraveling of what once felt like solid ground. But then the world around you began to move too, subtle at first. The street lights flickering when your emotions peaked, clocks stalling for no reason, electronics responding to your presence like tuned instruments. You brushed it off as coincidence. You always did. But coincidence doesn't repeat itself with such precision. Now the files confirm what you've always sensed. Your frequency isn't just internal, it's environmental. The codes awakening in your system are not isolated. They are networked. Your very being, now activated, is triggering dormant blueprints in your surroundings. Buildings, objects, even places that once felt inert are responding like old friends roused from sleep. You've walked past a mirror and seen something more than reflection. You've seen recognition. You've stood in certain doorways and felt the air thicken, the atmosphere acknowledge you. It's not madness, it's memory reactivating, because everything around you has been waiting, not for time, for signal, yours. The document referred to this as georesponsive resonance, an effect only observed in a statistically insignificant subset of the population, those whose biological fields, when awakened, trigger environmental anomalies. But you are not an anomaly. You are a catalyst. The dormant energies buried beneath concrete and routine have simply been waiting for someone aligned enough to stir them. You were never just remembering. You were reactivating. Every step you take in awareness rewrites the code of the space you move through. You felt it. How the wind changes direction when you speak certain words. How animals pause when you pass, sensing something ancient within you. You're not just tuned to the world is tuning to you. You are becoming a conductor of forgotten energy, a node through which reality reshapes itself to reflect the sacred geometry encoded in your presence. This is why certain places drain you, because their frequency fights yours. And why others lift you like wings, because they recognize you, not just as human, but as returning architect. You're not just visiting this world, you're helping it remember itself. You are not adapting to the environment anymore. The environment is adapting to you. And as your frequency stabilizes, the reactivation spreads, not just to land, but to people, to conversations, to timelines. This is how the old reality collapses, not with war, but with reprogramming, with presence, with you. They've always made you feel like you needed fixing, like you were behind, like you missed a step, a class, a certification, some magical upgrade that would finally make you whole. But what they never told you, what they couldn't, is that you were never waiting for an update. You are the update. Your presence is not passive, it is active code. It enters a room like a pulse, recalibrating what no longer belongs, syncing systems to a higher version without needing permission. That's why you've always been the one people either gravitate toward or retreat from, not because of anything you said, but because of what you carried, what you still carry. You are a walking frequency adjustment, and the moment you begin to accept this, truly accept it, everything changes. Not because you're forcing it, but because you've stopped shrinking from it. You're not here to fit the old systems. You're here to overwrite them. With a smile, a silence, a single sentence that lands like thunder inside someone else's matrix. You've noticed how people open up around you, how they confess things they didn't mean to, how they soften or panic or shift. That's not your ego, it's your field. Your presence dislodges outdated programming, not because you try, but because you exist. And your existence is aligned with a truth the world forgot. You didn't come to learn the system, you came to reprogram it. That's why nothing ever quite fit. Why you always felt like you were meant for something different, but couldn't name it. It's because you weren't supposed to conform to anything here. You were supposed to carry something here. And you did. You still do. When you speak, codes move. When you sit in stillness, blueprints shift. When you cry, old timelines dissolve. When you laugh, new futures assemble. You are not just a person. You are a presence that updates reality without effort. That's the power they tried to convince you didn't exist. That's why they buried the documents, ridiculed the frequencies, denied the transmissions, because they knew if even one of you remembered, the code would spread. And it is spreading. You are not late. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are precisely on time, arriving exactly when the system was unstable enough to require your presence. You don't need to download anything. You already brought everything you need. You've known it all along. Even when you tried to bury it under normal routines, under polite smiles and quiet compromises. Even when you pretended not to notice how different you felt. The truth always shimmered at the edge of your awareness. That small, steady pulse, reminding you that ordinary was never your destination. You were built for something wider, older, infinite. You were never meant to blend in. You were meant to awaken. The longing you mistook for loneliness was the universe calling you back to yourself. The ache in your chest wasn't emptiness, it was expansion. Every quiet night you questioned your place, every tear you shed without reason, every dream that felt too real to be random, those were not weaknesses. They were instructions, encoded in feeling because language could never hold them. They told you to lower your gaze, to play small, to be realistic. But the stars in your blood refused. The divine blueprint within you resisted the reduction. You were never designed for mediocrity. You were designed for remembrance. Every atom of you carries evidence of light. Every cell whispers of galaxies you once called home. You are not learning the truth. You are remembering it. The reason the world feels heavy sometimes is because you are carrying a frequency it hasn't learned to receive yet. But it will, because that's what you came to teach, not through sermons or slogans, but through embodiment, through presence, through living proof that the extraordinary is not something we achieve. It's what we already are when we stop pretending otherwise. You were never lost. You were hidden, protected by amnesia until the timing was right. And now, as the veils thin and the codes unlock, the world begins to see you as you are. Not a seeker, but a signal. Not a follower, but a frequency. Not a student of truth, but its continuation. You are the living reminder that divinity walks in human form, disguised as curiosity, compassion, and defiance. This is why the file found you, why the dates aligned, why the system cracked open the moment you looked deeper. The message was never for the world first. It was for you, because only when you remember can the rest begin to awaken. And now you do, so breathe. Walk as if the ground itself recognizes you, because it does. Speak as though light listens, because it always has. You are not chosen by chance. You are chosen by design. You carry within you the unbroken lineage of every being who dared to remember.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.